Welcome. This is Inclusive Agile presents Ben Gold. We're going to be talking about AI today. My name is Dee. My pronouns are they and them. And we're Inclusive Agile. We are an organization with a mission to create psychologically safe teams through agile practices and ultimately empathy and psychologically safe feedback. Our mission is to create is to make sure that everyone has the ability to do their very best work in the safest space possible. So if you like that mission, check out our right up here is our scan to donate. Please, our donations, when they come in, they go directly to providing the support, either by providing free tickets into our programs or for full programs that we will run for nonprofits or other small startups. So please, anything helps for all of those amazing people. Okay, let's actually talk about what we're going to be doing today. So AI, right? It's the new, you put AI in your stock name and all of a sudden it'll go up 50%, right? It's the new
Attracting all the
blockchain.
VCs, all of the money.
It's absolutely, it's the new blockchain, but useful. So um really super excited. Ben, you have a history. Can you actually give me a quick introduction of you and your history with AI? How did you get to coming into this space?
Sure. So I've been in marketing for high tech for just over 10 years, the last 5 years with enterprise level organizations. And was really brought into high tech because it's a personal passion of mine. I've always loved the intersection of technology and society and seeing how technology both changes society and how society changes through technology. And what that has allowed me to do is sort of like guide myself into working for these different, very large high-tech organizations. I've consulted for Amazon's AWS, for Intel and Microsoft, among others. And over the last couple of years, everything's been focused on the cloud, on AI, and now on generative AI and large language models. This is really these new technologies that are blowing people away with what they can do.
Awesome. And we've all been seeing that, right? Like AI, there's nowhere that it isn't right now. And the fact that ChatGPT just came out and was like, here, come use our tool. All you have to do is sign up. And then you get to this generative AI tool. And I heard this really great story that they were actually surprised. When they released this, they thought that they were doing something that lots of other places were doing. They did not think that it was a particularly exciting product, but the rest of the world didn't realize what has like the progress we've made in that generative AI. And that's changed everything. So AI is cool. We're all there.
Yeah.
What's the problem? Now, you and I have already talked about a few things that we want to talk about. I want to talk about when do we use AI, right? How do we, when should we use it? And then let's kind of dive into when we should and afterwards.
So I think the first thing we need to do is distinguish between the different types of AI, because AI is everywhere in everything we do, from just performing a basic Google search to, I mean, these days driving down the street, your car picks up how many different types of AI, whether it's stopping at a traffic light, that's counted by one type of AI and then goes into a database. And so the type of AI that we all have in our phones and our watches, that's very much an analytical AI. But now we've moved on to generative AI, which is the ability not just to analyze and interpret and provide, results from data, but the ability to recreate what it's read and the ability to regenerate its own types of content, be they images or, words. And so when we're talking about generative AI, it's really important to
distinguish.
Look at how you can use it, but at the same time, most importantly, understanding its limitations.
Yes.
I like really to lead with the limitations, because if you know what a generative AI model like ChatGPT can't do, it means that you understand the boundaries that you've got to work within and what you have to look out for. So the biggest problem and concern that we have with AI is underlying data. Yes.
Before we go to the problems, because I think that's where we're going to spend like all of the rest of our time, and it's the most fun. I wanted to like solidify that understanding. There's you said there's kind of two types of AI. There's an analytical AI, and then there's generative AI. And that analytical AI is more hard data, and what kind of a story can that data tell? So,
I mean, for organizations and businesses, anything, you can use AI to analyze your bank accounts to determine if there's fraudulent transactions. You can use AI to go through your entire customer list and see if you have, potential upsell opportunities. So,
I just realized I have one in my car. So and I've got an old car, but my insurance company sent me this tool that goes in my car and sends an app information on how well I've been driving.
Yep.
And it will say you had 9 incidences, right? Like you braked too hard, right? That's more than just data that it's gathered. It's data that it's interpreted and then sent me back some information.
And it's also sent a profile on you to your insurance agency.
Yes, there's always.
Sorry, that's terrifying as well.
Let's be real. These organizations know way more about us than we do.
Yes.
At this point. And that's the perfect lead in. So generative AI would be different in that it would take that data about how I drove and drive me to work.
Yes, if it was being integrated with like a self-driving car. Mm-hmm. But if I was your insurance agency, what I would do is I would take that data and then I would use that data to generate a summary of who D is and how his driving has changed over a period of 1 to 2 years. And if you've discovered that over this period he has gotten safer, he's braking more, further. Excuse me. They are braking further to towards a traffic light. Then then your agency will be able to create a new series of premiums based on the fact that you've been driving safely for the past year. And that's just one way that you can take data at huge scale and then personalize it just for you. So that's a form of analytical and generative AI working.
That's beautiful. There's one other example I wanted to just bring up as for the power of this generative AI and analytical AI. In that recently there's been an organization that's come out and said, hey, we can, using AI in a particular, gathering the information from a community, we can tell not just what the crime rates are going to be, but when and where, down to the corner. And they've had really, really high success rates. They have not released this to police because right now we're not convinced that police is there to actually prevent. Right. They're there to gain more money in prosecution. based on evidence. I don't think that's what every cop wants, but that's the society that we've kind of built. Super cool. I love that thing, but that could not only show, I feel like with that, could that not also be like, hey, the way D drives in this community, D's going to get in an accident 2018. Well, that was in the past. 2028 in February, based off of the data that's coming in right now. I mean, that far ahead's probably, but like next week you're going to get
an accident. Very much make predictions, but there would be so many potential variables for you to actually want to be driving down that street at that time for something to potentially happen. So I don't know. It would be able to make predictions more generally just based on your driving methods and how you are as a driver. Right. But going that extra step to make a prediction on where you might be, it will be able to hazard a guess. And that is, even a bit much.
I think that, and I think the conflict really is when we try and bring AI down to an individual, like you were saying, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to know where I want to go that day. Yes, we're going Minority Report, or Marvel Civil War 2. Yeah, I think that's one of the conflicts, is that it can't predict your particular actions. But given enough data, it has a really good guess that this particular space, with the information that's come in, this is likely going to be the outcome.
Yes.
And so it's not going to tell you who's going to do it, but it is going to tell you this is probably going to happen right around here. And I love that, because it could get us to the point where we go, yeah, driving in these 80% of scenarios is too dangerous. Here's how we can manage that. And then these 20%, great. Right.
And we are getting a lot of public and private initiatives for that sort of smart city optimization. I know that Google has just released a report that they were optimizing traffic lights, and they were able to not just save time in people's commute, but lowering the amount of greenhouse gas emissions, because they were automating green traffic lights at particular times, which meant that people's commutes were shorter, which means that they were spending, less time emitting pollution through their cars. So, that sort of AI analysis is really what we've been hoping and dreaming for the last ever. That's the science fiction day of everything being absolutely optimized.
Awesome. Okay, let's get to the fun stuff. But what happens when AI goes evil? No, I don't want to go there. I want to actually talk about what are the issues that we're running into now with these AI large language models. And in fact, let's take a second again. That separation of a regular AI, right? We have so many things in our lives that make decisions for us based off of input, but they're not generative, right? No. Generative is what uses these large language models to not just understand, but to produce something similar.
Correct.
Cool. So what's the problem there?
A couple of things. Number one is these large language models are made up of billions and billions and billions of parameters of data. So we're talking about books that have been scanned, white papers, entire source of the internet, as well as, just academic papers and this, that, and the other. All of Twitter. And it's really just a Reddit as well. It's a compilation of the internet and academia, and it is then put into a form of unstructured data that you can then start to interact with using natural language. And so it's as if you're asking, very much as if you're asking Google, but what it's outputting is not as accurate. Accuracy is not the most important part for a large language model. The most important role that a large language model fulfills, according to it, is to complete the output. And stop me if I'm getting a little bit too tangential.
Not yet.
When I, as a writer, as a content marketer, am dealing with a large language model, I use a couple of them every day. I use ChatGPT, I use Google's Bard, I use Claude. These are just different types of text language models. I use it as a chatbot to talk to confer with about a project that I'm working on. I use it as a sounding board to brainstorm ideas, to think about tense and different types of ways of framing a paragraph. Whereas you have another large language model, which is pretty much, you have the exact same language model that you may have for creating content and creating B2B text. You'll have another one that creates code. And this is for developers who can use it to very quickly generate code using natural language. So if I was a developer, it would be check through my code and determine if there are any errors. And then it would automatically scan your code, and if there were any errors, it would generate a debug report, or it would generate new code with the errors fixed. And a lot of these large language models is because it's unstructured data, it's very much at the mercy of the person who is inputting into the model for how it comes out, if that makes sense.
So, okay. Yes. Awesome. Before we get into, give me an example of how you would use ChatGPT as a sounding board for an idea.
So for instance, if I've been given a basic outline I can use actually an example from yesterday. I had an outline for a white paper that a client gave me. It was disparate. It was coherent, but it was a dozen plus people contributing to a single outline. And so you had a lot of different competing thoughts and ideas, which makes just simply understanding that and trying to interpret what the client wants difficult. So I took this entire outline, which was about 2 pages for a white paper about infrastructure, and I put it into ChatGPT. Well, in this particular case, it was Jasper, which is what I'm using. And I just said, take this outline and rewrite it coherently with a narrative for a white paper aimed at C-level executives. Provide a word count for every section, as well as arguments based on this outline that a C-level persona is going to want to hear. That would have taken me probably about 2-3 hours to read through, interpret, understand the ask, what the client was looking for. And within about less than a minute, it had generated an entire white paper outline with all of the arguments that I was looking for, with all of the content, with the suggestions for content, as well as with potential word counts. And it did this because this particular large model has been fed millions and billions of different types of white papers. And so it understands if you're looking to create a white paper that is aimed at a C-level audience, well, a C-level audience only reads on average between 2,500 to 3,500 words at most. And so you're going to want to keep it between that particular amount. And the C-level audience is also going to want to know about this, how AI infrastructure might impact them in this way and in this particular way. And so in the space of a blink of an eye, this model read through a 2-page outline of a white paper, was able to interpret, understand it, and then rewrite it in a way that conforms to an audience that I tell it to.
So,
and that happened in less than 2 minutes.
So what you're saying is it's magic.
Yes.
Cool. Now that's amazing. And I know, like, as I understand it, you're going to read through that. You're going to find inconsistencies within its structure, but inconsistencies with an output from ChatGPT is a way more easier to analyze and modify than inconsistencies from 12 individual people trying to create this thing. That's really, really cool. Thank you for sharing that specific example.
It allows me to go back to take the output. And I mean, it's nothing that I'm actually going to be putting in the white paper itself. I'm still going to be writing everything, but it's just this other completely neutral observer who can say, this is what these people are saying. And based on it, this is what the output should be. This is what the white paper should be looking like.
It's like a gathering of knowledge around structuring of a white paper, structuring of an audience. Really, those two things that are sometimes some of the hardest things to direct your white paper towards, right? That's the art of it often, is how to speak to those things, and then your ideas just come out. But now that part gets taken care of, not because the AI knows anything, but because it goes and says, the only thing I know is that there's a lot of other things that work like this. So let's make yours work like this.
Yes. And not just that, but you speak about the audience, because another way that you can approach it is, once again, the thing I love about large language models is that they are a complete blank slate. So if I say to Jasper or Bard or ChatGPT, think like a marketer, or think like a salesman, or think like an HR representative, then it's automatically going to be shaping everything I say from that point on, from the perspective of an HR representative or a marketer or a salesperson, because I've already said, first and foremost, this is, the framework in which you're working from, and now go and do the rest. And that is a really fantastic way to just do away with a lot of it allows me to analyze something from a different frame of reference and frame of mind that I might normally think about. Because, how I as a marketer approach something is very different from how a salesperson is going to approach something, even if we're talking to the same audience. And so being able to create have a salesperson here, or an HR representative here, or a data scientist here, all being the exact same large model, but I have access to all of these different subject matter experts. I just have to tell them to think it that way. And from there, every answer it makes is framed in that.
That's really, really beautiful. In that you can bring other voices in, but I think this is going to start hitting the cool part of our conversation, which is the
problems.
Yeah, but for example, that's not actually a marketer's voice, right? It is the consumption of a history of marketing voices, and so that's only going to be using the past of what marketers have been doing. And if it's smart, it will use recent information more than old information. But that doesn't give someone that does not give you a person that has experience that could actually be creative with you.
Yes,
Which I
exactly.
think is the
And
biggest difference. This is not a creative creature, it's a summarizing creature.
yes, that's a great way to put it, because it's only studying what has been and it can't study what will be, and it means that it cannot generate a new thought or an idea, which is why there's always going to be that human in the loop, that human element, not just to help create the prompt and to create an idea, but to judge and determine whether or not what the model is producing is accurate, and whether or not it fits into you know, the right standards of society, I think is probably one of the best ways to put it.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and I'm gonna do an advertisement. Do. This is Inclusive Agile. We are a training and coaching organization focused on creating psychologically safe environments within the workspace. We believe, based on evidence, that the workspace is where our mental health issues arise. They are responsible for more of our mental health state than our intimate partners and our therapist. That's our workplace. And so it's time for our workplace to start creating a space where we can actually be psychologically safe with each other, and turn into self-managing, self-healing teams that want to do the next right thing because they all love doing it together. So donate to us if you would like. If you're interested in finding out how to do this with your organization, you can also reach out to contact@inclusiveagile.io, or scan that. You'll get to our website, and you can contact us through there as well. And this is a reminder to spay and neuter your cats and dogs, because what's his name isn't around here to tell you to do that anymore. Okay, coming back in. Oh, that is a great question. Brett just brought in a great question. How did those of us that used to be the ones that could summarize and revoice things stay employed?
That is a great question. The way I like to look at it is, I am a marketer. I am incredibly replaceable via this technology, with the exception that I'm not. And the reason I say that is because I still need to look over and determine whether or not these outputs are correct. But not just that, just creating these outputs in order to create the correct summary and the correct sort of to gather the right sort of like data from that summary, you need to still be able to have that human element of inputting. When it comes to specifically to summarization, yeah, that's just unfortunately going to be taken over by AI. It's unfortunate, but it's also where the technology is heading. I like to say that I'm not going to be replaced by AI. I'm going to be replaced by a marketer using AI, which is why I am currently trying to use AI as much as possible, not just to improve my productivity, which I do, but also to keep me ahead of any potential layoffs or firings, because I need to show that I, as a marketer using AI, am keeping up with tools. What you can do in an age of generative AI, if you do feel that your role is being threatened, your life experience, your professional experience, and your personal experience, they ultimately are what is going to be driving an output. The AI has the data, but it's the person behind the AI, behind the large model, who is able to utilize the strengths of that data.
Awesome.
And what I say like that is, if your expertise is in summary and is in being able to distill huge, complex documents into a really effective summary, then that is a great way. If you want to stay relevant within generative AI, then you've got to focus on being able to determine whether or not the AI is doing a good job. You need to be transparent to your boss and say, what the AI is doing is not what I, as a professional, would do because of X, Y, and Z. Over the next couple of months to years, as a lot of these different large models are deployed, the one thing I really do concern myself about is the amount of people having sort of like an existential crisis because of where they're going to be fitting into their company now that, for instance, Brett here feels directly threatened by generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
Now take Brett and then multiply that across every single organization throughout the world. And it's a pretty frightening prospect.
Well, and it's not just, I think what's been neat about generative AI, and I say this as neat, and that may come across as cruel, but I think what I found as neat with AI is it convinced a lot of highly skilled people that automation is their problem too.
Yes.
Because I could not, 5-6 years ago, I was really getting into where AI is going, and the fact that we're really moving at an exponential pace, we're going to start creating and using models in days that we used to take months to create, right? And then that's going to get to hours. And that's really when that kind of generalized AI may show up. But that may not be another 10 years.
Yeah.
That may be a year as things just build on top of each other. And then you're able to take that complexity and then feed it into another model. They can start picking that stuff up a lot faster than, say, when a new framework for JavaScript is released, right? How long it takes the community to pick that up. They're going to be able to pick that up, take the chicken and leave the bone, and run with what is important for them very, very quickly. And I think I want to speak to Brett real quick in saying, I think our focus on summarizing people, a person, and helping them see their summarization is really where a lot of us are going to go that are summarizing people, right? We don't need to summarize data and ideas at a corporate level anymore, but there's no AI that's going to be like, hey, that's probably not what that person meant. And you just contributed to this particular system in this way. And that probably triggered something of theirs. So how do you then approach this better the next time? AI is not going to be able to do that. And that's why I love what we do. And then I do want to get to Daniel Foreman's question or point. I feel that AI is a brush that you as an artist can use. You can paint a masterpiece, but you have to learn how to use the brush. What do you think?
That's a perfect way of putting it. I actually say something similar in that generative AI and these models gives everyone the exact same set of tools, no matter who they are, their background, their socioeconomic status. Well, unfortunately, not their socioeconomic status, but the utopian idea is that no one will have an issue of access to these tools. And the question that I always ask someone is, if everyone has the exact same set of tools, the exact same paintbrush, what's going to make you different? How are you going to distinguish yourself in not just your job, but in your personal life, professional life, in social life, everything? Because these large models, even though we're talking about them in a professional context, they're going to be deployed anywhere and everywhere in different ways. It's just that it's the easiest way to envision them is in a professional context, because I mean, for something like this, I'm able to create entire white papers out of, a couple of different prompts, or, entire blog posts out of a couple of different prompts. Everyone has that same capability. I need to make sure that what I'm doing is better. Not necessarily, but just is that I'm able to infuse my own humanity and my own experience and my own eye of, my decade plus in marketing whenever I'm looking at, whenever I'm looking at an output from anything.
Mm-hmm.
I am able to say, yes, I as a marketer would do this, or no, I don't think that it's focusing on the right point of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my brush. I'm using it as an artist as to market. Anyone can use that same model to sell, to devise letters to their landlords or parents, whatever they want to do. It's but yeah, I think I do view AI as a brush. It's beautiful.
I love it. I love it. And I love the idea of brush, because if you have, like, yes, we've all painted, but things like PowerPoint is like, hey, a brush is now, hey, I want to actually go over this thing and make all of the leaves look clearer and cut out all of the something, right? All the brown, or bring that down, right? That's a whole ass brush now, that will do that work for you. And people don't then look at Photoshop stuff and say, well, that wasn't cool. They go, you were able to build something amazing. Follow this really amazing person on YouTube that's a graphic special effects person. So they make special effects with their kids because the tools have become so easy. Things like their kid goes and jumps into a puddle, and then they use special effects to make it look like the kid just fell right through. Awesome, right? Because those tools are easier. And so this is really just another tool that can get us all to the point where, hey, I can think as a marketer and a salesperson right now to be able to write how I want to sell my event.
I was actually,
and I can get enough information to do that.
I a couple of months ago, I was lucky enough to interview someone whose series on art had gone viral. It was a series of historical figures, as if they were taking selfies. So it was wonderful. It was Jesus Christ, Henry VIII, at the Battle of Agincourt. Yeah, exactly. So I was talking to him, and what he said, that he was just playing around with an image generator, but because he had a lifetime of experience in video editing, he started to bring in different photography terms and different types of video lexicon. And that was then because the Midjourney, the image generator, understood what it was talking about, even using completely different terms. It was able to improve the paintings and give it a far more realistic effect.
That's so cool.
And that wasn't something that other people were doing, because they weren't using, they were art majors in university, as opposed to someone who'd been working for the BBC for 30 years and was a videographer.
Awesome. Seriously, I think that's the exciting part. Yes, there's a lot of fear out there, but it is really about, like you said, learning how to use the tool. Now, we've talked a lot earlier about how broken the tool is. So let's dive right into that. What is the largest pain point for these large language models in their ability to actually create summaries and predictions, or whatever they generate? What's the biggest problem?
The biggest problem is data. And I say that two reasons. Number one, the underlying training data, a lot of it is proprietary, and they don't really tell you what they've been training their models on. But also number two, even data is biased in some way. And so for instance, before when you were talking about how they were using a model to sort of predict where crime would occur, you take that data, you feed it into a large model, and it's going to give you exactly what it said, a historical look at crime rates. Not necessarily where crime will occur, but where crime has occurred. Which complicates it because A, it can't determine anything that is not happened. But also B, a lot of those crime rates are biased in and of themselves. So for instance, if you look at the history of policing pretty much everywhere, you have a lot of targeting against Black and brown minority communities, and that is just simply going to be perpetuated using a large model.
So I want to bring that around, right? Like I want to sit with that for just a second. Let's just to make sure everyone's kind of exactly where we are, bringing people back up. The issue is that, hey, our society from which all of this data derives is not a just one.
Yes.
Right? We know that we have biases. We know that those biases affect the way that we do things. Not only do we have our own individual biases, but we've had systems of biases, redlining to keep Black people out of white neighborhoods, pioneering where Black people showing up in white neighborhoods would then force white people out because they just didn't want to be around Black people. Those are systemic problems that then kind of get driven into additional ones. The one I think you're talking about is brown and Black people are over policed.
Yes.
Right. Now, what does that mean? You have some people that are saying, well, that's because Black and brown people commit more crime, and so they need to be policed more. But you have another look at that data and you say, well, actually, it turns out that white people commit just as much crimes, but they're punished less often for it. They're caught less often for it, right? And those two are very different things. I'm caught less often because they're not looking. And then even when I'm caught, I'm often not punished, right? So given those things, we put this large language model, and you're going to show
exactly what you've always shown
is going to have less crime than this Black neighborhood, right? But what's cool about that is if you do bring that into both of these things may be true. So let's figure out what it is. Now we can actually play with that. Now we can say, hey, let's say we take all of these Black people in this space and put them into a large data model where they're all wealthy and they all act wealthy. Does it change? What I'm really diving into there is, yes, it's going to give us information that's going to continue to support our own biases, but it's also going to give us tools to be able to say, this is actually just over policing. If you were to police at the same rates based off of actual actions, this is where this would happen. But what's cool is that's not what they're saying now. They're not saying, here's how crime would happen if everything was equal. It's saying, here's how crime happens in the world we have right now. What's cool is we've seen way more evidence that when you play with those models and you increase access, you increase a basic income and provide social services for those people, crime rates just go down.
Mm-hmm.
And then we practiced it. It was really amazing. During COVID, when we started giving money to people, there was a large group of people that were petty thieves, right? They felt like they needed to do this to live. When they started having money in their bank account, they stopped committing crime. They stopped. And then when they lost those benefits, the crime rates went up again. right? We know this is how this works. And now we'll even have large data models that can show that, except there is that problem of if someone wants to interpret it a different way.
So
and in the end,
the important thing to do when it comes to, and I come back to lead with the limitations, is whenever you see an output, the first thing you have to do is question it. And that is really the one thing, okay, it sounds stupid. This is a large language model that we've put all of this data in. Why should I be questioning exactly what it's producing? As you said, because the data itself has a bias. And to overcome that bias, the best way is to get people who have different understandings of the data, both in terms of their own personal relationship or a personal connection, or are able to challenge it. And the best way that you do that is through a number of diverse individuals across genders, across orientations, across race, across financial abilities. You need to have as much diversity as you can within teams, because if not, the default may be to fall back on what the model says. And doing that can just be dangerous. And any organization that is going to be integrating these models really need to make sure that when it comes to an output, you're questioning it, but you're not just questioning whatever numbers are behind it, which you should, but you're questioning just the entire sense of the data itself.
I want to really drive something home there. Sure. Do not use large language models to answer questions or solve debates.
No problem.
This was recently used in
or file lawsuits.
One of our local school boards to determine whether books had sexual content in them. So they would just ask, does Catcher in the Rye have sexual content in it? Yes, it does. Banned. Does this have sexual content in it? Banned. When in reality, our understanding of sexuality changes over time and space. And so whatever that large language model is, where is that centered? Mm-hmm. Is that centered here in the States where sexual content is very, very different? Or is it centered there in Australia, right?
Oh, no, I'm based in the US.
Oh, you just have a really cool accent.
Thank you. I'm from Australia, but yeah.
I think that's where I got mixed up because you talked about the Australian. Anyway, so don't do that. It is not there to gather the information of the world to give you the right answer. It's there to gather the information of the world to give you a summary of that information.
And for me, it is to accomplish something that would either have taken me way too long or something that I could never do before. And I think to use that as a to move up into the presentation that I had about the image.
Yeah, please. So hold on. Let's set the stage here. Right now, so we've just been talking about there's problems with data in and creating garbage data out. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Let's everyone remember that it's not, you're not just questioning the numbers and the text, but how did this data come to this conclusion in the first place? And that comes from there's a number of images out there, and I don't want to go into those because I don't know what's in your presentation. I coming in blind, so tell us what you're doing right now. You made this.
I made this literally this morning, and what I wanted to show is that This is basically how I created an image for this webinar. I have absolutely no skill when it comes to graphic design or anything like that. But I wanted to be able to show the power of a large language model. And I used two different large language models in this particular occasion. The first was Claude, which is a text-based model. And I told Claude just this here, I need a prompt for an image generator to appear beside a webinar. Within about 10 to 15 seconds, it produced what's here on the right. Now, this is everything that I would need in order to create a really good image. It's talking about, what the title is, the audience. So the large language model understands exactly who it's going towards. The objective is to create an eye-catching, relevant image. Team professionals from IT, creative roles, with talking about generative AI technology, even giving me the size and style, professional stock business imagery. And this is what it produced. If we can move to the next page. So on the right, this all took about 2 minutes. And if I didn't have, a nice sense of I guess, style, I would not have too much of a problem in sending that to you and saying, hey, this is going to be my image. There are a couple of issues with it. If you look closely, for instance, the people's faces are still a bit terrifying. But if I had played with this, if I had, tuned it a little bit more, saying, straighten out people's faces, or, let's make the back of here, the whiteboard, let's straighten that up. If I spent maybe 15, 20 minutes retuning and reprompting this using natural language, this would be a really good image to have put aside on, for this webinar.
Okay. I want to get clear.
Yes.
What was the prompt you put in for this? Was it that original one from the previous slide,
Yes.
or was it all this information?
So the original, I put this original one into Claude. This was Claude's output. And then I put Claude's output into Adobe Firefly.
Okay. So it's almost like a game of telephone at this point.
Exactly. I'm using the models to improve my process. So I'm using them against each other. Not even against each other. I'm using them in process with each other.
Right.
But here's the thing. I couldn't do this even if I wanted to. I couldn't, be able to create any sort of artwork. And in less than 2 minutes, I was able to produce this. And the reason I wanted to choose art is because, look, I can write thousands and thousands and thousands of words. They are engaging. They will, make your heart just swell with pride about where we're coming, about generative AI. But my image and graphic design skills are awful. And in less than 2 minutes, I was able to create this. If this isn't something that leads people to have serious concerns or, ideas about what's going to be happening over the next few years, I don't know what will. Just the opportunities are incredible, but with each opportunity comes risk, comes, a lot of concern for how are you going to be able to integrate these technologies correctly and ethically and responsibly?
Yes.
And how are you going to make sure that when you are integrating these models, how are you making sure that your employees are feeling safe enough to use them? And how are you making your employees feel that their jobs aren't at risk if they're going to be using the tools you're giving them?
Awesome. Okay. That was really, really cool. And if we're going to have this recording posted, if you didn't get a chance and you were just kind of paying attention, go back and look at that picture and look at their faces.
Terrifying.
And I think that's a particularly perfect example of how you question the output, right? It looks like a face,
Ish.
sort of. Ish.
I will say one thing. What really impressed me was not so much the faces, but the diversity of characters. I didn't mention anything in the output about what race or what sort of gender any of the people should be. The model assumed that.
I think that's really cool. And I think that came out of a lot of effort in the business world to create a more gender diverse representation in images, right? You go and you look around, and if you find an organization that just has all white people in all of their stuff, that's probably all pictures of their actual workplace. But these days it's really, that's where the direction is going, is a multicultural one. Okay. I want to highlight Jordan's thing last. I think it's a perfect way to kind of close things up. She says, good to see you embracing the potential of innovation with a realistic outlook rather than a fearful one, or one that ignores its drawbacks. We need realism to make real change. Now, I'm not a realist, but I do completely agree. The idea here is just like anything else. Yes, some jobs are going to go, just like we no longer need a stable master in our house, right? We just don't. But now that person's working
as an app developer.
As an app developer, or maybe they really like to be in cars, and so they're working at fixing cars. In our society changes, and we're going to have to get used to it. But as we adopt these models, we get to recognize they are not perfect. They are not God. They cannot answer existential questions that we have not already answered ourselves. So use them as tools, as brushes that you argue with and modify to your own extent. But yeah, there's a lot of fear, but
legitimate fear.
No, absolutely. But I also think that's part of capitalism. Is a drive of fear.
Oh, that is a whole different conversation.
So, yeah, we'll have another conversation on capitalism, but I think that fear is built into our system a little bit. That we're supposed to be afraid so that we do and learn and drive towards more. I don't necessarily agree with that being a good way to get that to happen, but understand that everything that's come along has driven fear and innovation. And so which one do you want to be a part of, right? Do you want to be a part of fear, or do you want to be a part of the innovation?
Like I say,
thank you.
I'm not going to be replaced by AI. I'm going to be replaced by a marketer using AI.
And I'm off to write an event using AI now.
Have fun with it. Check the output.
I shouldn't just run the event right afterwards.
I mean, you can try.
Hey, Ben, this has been so amazing. Everybody, thank you for everybody. I have one more comment or two more comments. Amaze, thank you for the wonderful example. LinkedIn user. Daniel Foreman, I find that different AI image generators have different biases even. Often I found that the AI isn't biased on race, but tends to favor females, which is interesting because our producer was just commenting about how we spent hours trying to get a business meeting like that, but using foxes, and how it would just not generate women foxes. A
lot of entrenched misogyny in the fox kingdom.
I like you so much, Ben. We're going to have another conversation about something. I'll let Carissa pick the topic and we'll just show up because this is so much fun. But thank you again, Ben. And we are Inclusive Agile. We help create psychologically safe teams to build psychologically safe organizations. You can donate to our mission here. Our specific mission is to create happy workplaces that are safe for 5,000 people. There's a better way to say those words, but I'm not remembering them right now. But that's what we do. Please, anything you give helps us provide this service to others, helps us create this space for others, or be able to pay for people like Ben that charge us for this. And we appreciate anything that we can get in there so we can keep doing this really, really amazing work. Thank you. That's my pitch. I want you to end with yours. Ben, do you have anything out there that you're selling right now, or any services you were providing that our audience may be able to reach out to you for?
I am not. I do work for Sojust Solutions, SOJUST SOLUTIONS. So if you would like to hire them, please do. That's literally who I work for. I have nothing else.
It's beautiful. What does Sojust do?
We provide high-tech consulting services. And we do so with a DEI inclusive mindset.
Thank you for what you do. Seriously, thank you. All right, Ben. Everybody, thank you so much. Signing off. We like to do finger guns.
Oh, yeah.